Starcraft is a game in which your objective is generally to construct buildings that produce units to destroy your opponent. That's pretty much how every RTS plays, but I lack the ability to do things the intended way and the concept of being in constant agony. I thought it'd be funny if I beat Heartless Swarm with only drones. I sat down to begin editing it, and then realized somebody did my video, but better. So instead, I did something different. Today, I'm going to ask and answer a question probably none of you have ever thought to yourself. Can you beat Wings of Liberty without building anything? Now there are a few rules that I'm going to go over, but they're fairly self-explanatory. I can't build any units from my production facilities, and I can't construct any buildings with my SCVs. The only exception to those rules are units that can be built upon or summoned by other units I get throughout the mission. Upgrades are allowed, but only on maps that have access to either an engineering bay or an armory. The main goal we are shooting for is to beat the final mission all in. Initially I was going to do every mission, but there's actually one that made it entirely impossible, and trust me, we will get to that. Casual makes the game trivial due to reducing the health and damage of your opponents by half, so I went with normal instead. I don't think some of the story missions are possible on hard or above, but if you'd like to see me try that at a future point, feel free to let me know in the comments. With all that said and done, let's begin. The tutorial mission showcases how to control your units and how to shoot the Marine's signature C-14 Gauss rifle. Since I can't really build anything, there's not too much to cover, so we'll go ahead and skip straight to the second mission. The strategy here is pretty straightforward. Once you get your medics from the rebel outpost, there's very little that can stop you from pressing F2 and A-moving the Dominion base. However, that didn't stop me from obnoxiously spamming random keys in order to make my APM higher to raise my self-esteem. Didn't work, but I thought I'd give it a try. Up next is a fairly lengthy defense segment where we have to defend our base while Matt saves us from hell. Now's a good time to cover Terran's ability to lift off buildings. While it's fairly niche in most cases, in this challenge it is nearly required. Normally supply depots would take the role of being your main wall building, however Raynor doesn't agree with that and instead opts to put them in the middle of your base in seemingly random positions. So using your starting facilities that have no use as walls is very beneficial. Also, the ability to store your SCVs in your command center is almost never used in either the multiplayer or any of the campaigns, but in this challenge it is a godsend. The first thing I do is start clearing out the burrowed Zerg around the area. If we want to rescue the rebels throughout the mission, we need to kill them first, and the rebels are the only units that I can acquire throughout the mission. Once we cleared the surrounding area, I hid an SCV in a tree to get the remaining two rebel groups once they spawn. He blended in surprisingly well for a giant blue space construction vehicle, so I have to give him kudos. Once we get the rebels, our only objective is to survive. With their walls in place and our SCVs on repair duty, there wasn't too much opposition. However, what I wasn't prepared for was my mother dearest to charge into my room and tell me to get dinner. I forgot to pause, and by the time I got back, I was in very deep shit. However, the Zerg was much more enticed to my last Marines than my buildings, which would have lost me the mission if they destroyed. Now we're on the Hyperion and we have access to the armory. I won't cover all the upgrades I get, but I'll make sure to display them on screen whenever I get anything important. The next mission is Smash and Grab, and our objective is to get the artifact and destroy the 3 inconspicuous stone zealots. First thing I do is lift off my command center to pick up research and eventually work towards flying towards the main objective. The best part about this mission is the marauders you get from my man Swan. Marauders deal extra damage to armored, and that proved to be very useful due to the amount of stalkers, photon cannons, and eventually the stone zealots at the end of the mission. Our main force starts to carve a warpath towards the objective while my command center slowly flies to meet them there. Once my units got to the objective, I used my command center as a wall to stop the zealots from attacking my critical units. The stone zealots attacked the command center, and eventually my marauders target fired them down and beat the mission. Now we have access to mercenaries. A better YouTuber than me would create a clever metaphor to describe how worthless they are. However, I'm not. Now we arrive at Redstone and have to gather 8,000 minerals. If you're really good at the game, you can beat the mission within minutes. However, my Reaper micro is comparable to a 3-year-old who smashed the keyboard thinking we're doing something right. The sheer amount of Reapers and minerals hidden throughout the mission makes the daunting task of collecting all 8,000 minerals pretty much a cakewalk. Also, the game really doesn't want you to lose your SCVs. If you're completely oblivious, like me, the game just gives you them if they all die. So despite all of my blatantly obvious mistakes, I still won because Jimmy took pity on me. After that, we have the ability to research upgrades. There are only 3 tiers in which there's a decision to be made at all. The only choices I made were for extra health for both my bunker and my units. We have 2 options for the next mission, and I decided to go with Welcome to the Jungle. Going into this, my only strategy was to rush and gather the terrazine to complete the mission before any large forces came to destroy me. While I was prepared for this mission to kick my ass, it was over almost instantly. The ability to just completely blitz the objective actually trivializes it entirely, and is something I'd recommend on any difficulty. Now we have to go to Tarsonis to destroy a bunch of choo-choo trains. Oh. Can you hear that? Oh. What timing? Holy shit. I really wanted to rush to get to the dig so I could get access to Protoss missions for research. The main strategy to beat the mission is to use our buildings as distractions so our Marines and Diamondbacks can attack the train with little to no opposition. The mission is very kind with the free resources and units you get, since every train drops an abundance of minerals and gas, and you can get all the bonus objectives within the first few minutes of the game starting. There were occasional events that happened in between every few trains, such as building bunkers, increasing the speed, and finding out that you can click the dog so many times that it explodes. While the nuclear dog was cool, the only one of note was the Marauder kill team. To say my Diamondbacks couldn't win a direct engagement with them is a pretty vast understatement, so I had to avoid them at all costs. However, the Marauders are very slow, so I avoided them fairly easily and managed to destroy the last train required to achieve victory. After that is Cutthroat, which is essentially Devil's Playground 2.0. However, one of the main differences is that the Vultures are mechanical, and thus can be repaired by SCVs. This helped keep my initial forces survive until I bought the contract. Once we got the contract, we can rush down Orlan's base and completely decimate him without remorse. Now we have a lot of options for the next mission. I decided to go to New Folsom, where I could have went with either Nova or Tosh. If Starcraft has taught me anything, it's that black and red units are absurdly overpowered, so I went with Tosh. Doing this, we get 150,000 credits and access to Spectres. Now we're at the dig, which takes fucking forever. If you don't know, the lower your difficulty is, the slower the game speed is, and vice versa. This makes already one of the longest missions in the game even longer. My strategy was to use my starting biological force to kill the weaker units, and use the drill on high priority targets like Colossi or Archons. The mission was incredibly slow, but it wasn't necessarily difficult either, more so tedious than anything else. Now we have access to Protoss missions, which I mentioned earlier. The same rules apply here as the Terran campaign. No units, no buildings, nothing. Everything was going well. Zeratul stabbed a bunch of dudes, and I was ready to beat the second mission for the research. But remember how I said at the beginning of this that there's one mission that made the goal of completing every mission impossible? This is what I was talking about. This really disappointed me because if I had as little as 3 pylons as leverage, this mission would be laughably easy to beat. After this, I decided my only objective was to beat All In. As a result, I also skipped all the Hansen missions. They're all incredibly annoying. Defending civilians from mutalised swarms with 2 firebats isn't very fun. I don't think it's impossible, but they are incredibly grating. Now we're assigned to Tirador to aid the Moebius Foundation. You have to destroy the 3 data cores before Queen Bitch of the Universe finds them. You start with 2 medevacs and get an excessive amount of free units in between every data core. You can kill a Brutalist for research, but it's incredibly hard to kill, and even getting all of your units on the island is a difficult task on its own. So I just rushed to final data core with everything I had, and got out of there before the Nidusworms could overrun my forces. Up next is Engine of Destruction. This mission is pretty much the same on all difficulties. Get SCVs to repair the Odin, and use stealth units to defeat high priority targets in the oncoming bases. It's really no different in this challenge, especially due to our SCV upgrade that we got to increase the repair efficiency. However, what's incredibly annoying are the attack waves they send out at you. I thought I was clever by sending out my buildings all over the map to ensure their survival. However, the game had other plans. They started sending out Vikings and medevacs to destroy my buildings, and I couldn't deploy them on the ground because of the supporting Banshees and Reapers. I tried to out-micro the Vikings eventually, but in the process lost the Odin, failing the mission. I rewarded an old save and lost all my Wraiths to the Viking hit squad, but managed to barely get to the Odin in time to repair it, and proceed to nuke the hell out of the last Dominion base and beat the mission. Everything I just said about Engine of Destruction applies to Media Blitz as well. The only strategy that goes into mission is which bases to attack during the surprise attack. I got rid of the biological base and factory base since they have more defensive tools and buildings that can be an annoyance to the Odin. You can easily solo this mission with the Odin even on the hardest difficulty, so on normal it was especially easy. Up next is Supernova, which was by far the hardest. Can I record a video? The train is gone. Let's try again. Maybe this time a microwave, or a train, or a fucking AC-130 won't ravage my goddamn household this time. Now we're at Supernova, which was by far the hardest mission in my original playthrough. but I've developed another strategy that made the mission a lot easier. My first goal is to clear out the cannons and Protoss forces in the bottom right of the map. After that, I have a pretty good foothold to repair my Banshees and stall for energy to cloak. Once you get to this point, the only thing you have to do is clear the detectors, repair, stall for energy, and repeat. Eventually a rogue Colossus found out about my antics, but by that point all of the cannons were destroyed, so all I had to do was right click the artifact and beat the mission. Now we're at Maw of the Void, which is honestly just an incredibly tedious mission any difficulty you play it on. Just like Tyrador, we're almost never at our main base, so I decided to throw out all my facilities in random positions so they couldn't get destroyed. Except for the command center, which I brought along with the battle cruiser so they could be repaired. The Dark Templar you also get throughout the mission proved to be immensely useful, but gradually lost relevance by the time you got to the final stronghold. Speaking of which, it's defended by a mothership. I don't think I've ever been more irritated at a single unit in Starcraft history than this mothership. Its only goal was to drag on the mission by a needlessly large amount by sending my battle cruisers to the Shadow Realm, and nothing else. Did it stop my advancement? No, not at all, but it was excessively annoying and it tilted me far more than it had any right to. After being sent to the Shadow Realm one too many times, I said fuck it and right-clicked the Xel'Naga Vault, which worked? Floating bathtubs are really good units. Now we're at Char, which is the final planet of the game, starting with the Gates of Hell. The only way for us to get this army is through drop pods entering the atmosphere. They're mostly pretty easy to get, other than an Ultralisk who teleport directly on top of my units. Other than that, there's no problem getting any of the drop pods. Once we got our army, we eventually started making our way towards Warfield to destroy the Nidus Worms. Once we got to this point, my ADHD had reached critical levels, and I was smashing buttons for the sake of smashing buttons. After all, the only metric that matters in StarCraft is APM, everything else is worthless. Eventually we made our way to Warfield and beat the mission. Up next we have a choice between destroying the Nidus Worms or the air units in the final mission. While it's entirely possible to beat the mission that neutralizes the air threat, Tychus' choice is just a base hero mission, so I opted for the neutralization of Nidus Worms. It's honestly debatable as to whether this was the correct choice or not. In retrospect, I feel like I should have went for the platform instead, but regardless, we are now at All In, the final mission of the game. And it wasn't too fun. Even with the immense starting force you get, holding off the Zerg is no easy task. However, the biggest threat in this mission by far was Kerrigan. Kerrigan has the funny gimmick of being fucking immortal, and a lot of abilities that can entirely ruin your day. Eventually I found out the optimal strategy to beat her. Battle cruisers or siege tanks? No. She one-shots those instantly. Defensive structures? Also no. She does an insane amount of damage to them. I shit you not, the optimal combatant to Kerrigan are SCVs. Since you can one-shot any of your powerful units, it's actually the most effective to just have her one-shot your SCVs instead. Eventually near the last remaining minutes of the mission, it's beneficial to retreat to the artifact so you can position your units to directly defend it. After an hour and a half of constant saving and reloading, I was finally able to beat All In with the artifact under siege and my last remaining units completely surrounded. Thus, Wings of Liberty has been conquered without building anything. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like. If you think I'm a complete failure of a human being who should retreat back into the tube they were birthed in, feel free to dislike as well. If you want more content like this, make sure to comment what you'd like me to try and subscribe. Thank you all for watching, and as always, stay frosty my friends.